just wanted to catch the train, or the plane. Before I go to the room, because I see Damien Cotier still sitting there, and he's also one of my allies in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. And what I really appreciate what Martin said, and which was not my idea, but Elodie Fischer from the Secretariat of Peace Equality Committee said, Petra, you should interview your male colleagues about their position on how to involve role of men and boys in stopping gender-based violence. And I spoke to Damien as well. So before I go to Rijntje, maybe a few words from Damien when you listen to this conversation. I know I call you off guard, but I'm sure you can deal with that. Damien.
As a politician, I will pretend I'm not caught out of guard. No, but actually not, because I was thinking of this and discussing with a colleague before on that. And first, I like the idea of making it a competition out of it. The idea to take what men like to do, to use it to involve them. I think it's an important thing. But the other thing I wanted to say, and I think we already discussed this once together, Petra, is sometimes male don't dare to intervene in this kind of conversation. If you have a discussion about that, we would, in a political assembly, we would just let the women speak about it because they know more about the problem they can have, and then maybe how we can solve them. And maybe we will also not want to maybe take the place exactly in this debate, and I think it's wrong. I think it's exactly when we have to talk together and to look at the different perspectives. And you speak always of allies. Yes, to also bring this male perspective or this male discourse into that. But maybe the signal well, when you asked me to come and make sure that I would be there and say something, actually, probably it's an important signal, because maybe I wouldn't come, or I wouldn't take the floor in another situation. And probably it's something we can improve in our parliament, in any political discussion about this kind of topic, to really underline its importance that we all talk about it and together.
It's so simple. I just had to invite you.
Yeah, actually it is.
And now, I mean, I must say that the men I interviewed, they report back to me, sorry, I cannot be here. They feel responsibility. And this is why we also have the word role and responsibility. And I felt, and I don't know whether that's a competitive issue, but I felt the men I asked to be involved, they felt taken seriously by me, that they feel that they have a responsibility in this issue. So this is something for the team here who are working on concluding statements. Rijntje van Haringen is the CEO, I think I can call you like that, or the director of CARE Netherlands. Full disclaimer, I have been a board member of CARE International and CARE Netherlands 15 years ago, so no conflict of interest here. But I know that as CARE, you do a lot on feminist foreign policy and the role of men and boys. So the floor is for you for like 2 minutes.
Thank you, Petra.
Share your thoughts.
Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, we work on feminist foreign policy, definitely also on engaging men and boys, mostly outside Europe, I must say. And I was triggered a little bit by the example that Martin just gave of Afghanistan and of what we have talked about so far, that it's really about social norms change, right? That you want collectively to see if you can change something in the predominant beliefs about the roles of men and women. And what we find in our work, and I can give examples of different countries where we work, is that if you do that and you start working with women because you feel it's their right to, I don't know, economically develop or have their own enterprise or speak up politically, the teams that we work with in the countries will tell us if you just do that, you will increase violence against these women because that will be the response to their enhanced freedom or their increased power. And in most of the country teams that we work with, they will not want us to just work with women, also not to just work with men, but to include in all the projects that we do a dialogue between the men and the women that we work with in the communities so that they can have the conversation themselves. And it's really fascinating that women who work that we work on enterprise development with, and who end up becoming stronger, having their own income, will generate more in the beginning. It will increase the levels of violence in the community. And then you engage in conversations, and men are asked by the women in facilitated conversations, why do you do that? Why do you feel that you need violence now that she becomes stronger? And it is from fear. Men will then say, it's out of fear that she will now leave me. So I need to show that I'm stronger so that she stays. And if you don't have the dialogue, if we continue thinking it's either supporting women or supporting men in their role, it's really the conversation. And I think some of us have mentioned it. And it's not from one day to another, but it does require, and that's been mentioned by others before, male champions, male role models, for it to become normal that women play the role that we think they should be allowed to play without them receiving more violence. So I think social norms change does need to start with men, because women do not have the space to make the changes, but it needs to involve both sides.
Thank you very much for that observation. And we recently had a very interesting conversation with Nice Ngenya, who is an FGM activist from Kenya, and she said the same. She said you need to involve the community. You have to make this a community issue. And she also said something that I liked about when it comes to gender, and it also has to do with my own age now, that to involve the wiser women of the tribe, that sometimes men take more from the wiser women of the tribe than from the younger women. Do you recognize this as well when you work with communities?
Yeah, I think it's that, but also the wiser men in the community. I really think you need to work with the male leaders, religious leaders. See, and that's some successes that we had in Afghanistan, in Burundi, involving the male leaders in those conversations. And if they start to say, this needs to change.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to go quickly because I got a signal that the interpreters can only do 10 minutes overtime, and we are so appreciative of the interpreters. So thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, this is for you. I would like to go to Aleid van den Brink. Aleid, please introduce yourself. Tell people that we work for Grevio and what that organization does. And I know that you have some observations as well. The floor is yours.
Thank you for giving me the floor. And congratulations with your wonderful report and all these outputs and inputs that we get here. Grevio is the monitoring body of the Istanbul Convention. And in fact, we are a kind of factory of the mirrors that we were talking about. The mirrors to look into through which the countries can see what is needed to further implement all the requirements of the Istanbul Convention. And of course, the role and responsibility of men and boys is explicit one of the topics within especially our prevention pillar, so to say. And what we produce are, studies and reports, from about 100 pages. We try to get an overview about prevention, protection, prosecution, and policies, holistic policies. But we also try to be as concrete as possible. So in our reports, you can find a lot about what is needed to involve men and boys, because the Istanbul Convention, in the end, it was already called a golden standard, and it is a golden standard. It's focused on changing hearts and minds, and that's not an easy goal. It's a long way, a long-term goal. But we can see that there are steps, that countries take steps in the direction we are talking about this afternoon. And of course, there are a lot of challenges left. We will go on. Also, in our next round of evaluation, we will focus on the role of men and boys in the same way as we did in the first round. But we also see a lot of promising practices, and we heard a lot of those practices today as well. So go on with exchange of promising practices and taking responsibility more and more, because it's a problem in society. Everybody that says that has right. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleid. And I think the Grevio reports really also the Grevio report on the Netherlands gave a very good mirror on how we try to do things gender neutral, which is really a mistake. I'm just calling it as it is, but we are learning. Now, Simon, I didn't prepare this, But as Canada is an affiliated member to the Council of Europe and you're here, I would like to give the floor to you as well, Simon Collard-Wexler, who is from the Canadian Embassy, and I know that your Prime Minister is definitely a he for she champion. Sometimes he's being criticized internally, I know, it's not all rosy, but can you give your thoughts on the importance you attach to this issue?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for a really fantastic set of panels. I really enjoyed it, and I think the questions were excellent, so thank you all for that. And you know, this is an issue that's near and dear to our hearts as a country has a feminist foreign policy. But I think in particular the role of men and boys is one that we're still struggling with, I think. And I think for a lot of men and boys, we're at a period where they're facing conflicting pressures. They have pressures to pursue more progressive attitudes about gender equality, but they're being held back within their own societies, including our own, and as well in the Netherlands, by traditional roles. And I think it's really important that we look at the enforcers of those gender norms and how we can address those. We see those all the time in sports. I mean, a good example of, you know, toughen up. I mean, I'm from a country where there's hockey, right? And this is very prevalent there. But I think also about how we enforce certain gender norms. And it's important for us to understand that if we want men to play a more productive role, that they be freed from the prison of gender roles that men face, because that really inhibits their role in terms of promoting gender equality. And we see the enforcers of these male gender norms all the time. And we see them in sports, obviously. We see it in society. We see it in increasingly all these laws. I won't mention my neighbor to the south that has laws about drag queens and having drag queens, for example, read stories to children, which is actually a really fun thing. But it goes against traditional gender norms in a lot of countries. And what they're doing is they're reinforcing a conception of what men are supposed to do and look like. And we were talking about children, right? And a lot of people who are against it feel like children shouldn't be exposed to that. My view is the opposite. Children should be exposed to a variety of gender norms and that they should feel empowered and freed from those. So I think we really need to look at that, and we need to look at the enforcers within our society of traditional gender norms, because they're really holding back not just men, but also gender equality more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon. And I have like 100 questions. We have to organize another seminar because there's so many questions in my head. I see Esther van Dijk, the Director of Emancipation of the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, already smiling at me. And I would really like to learn from you where we are when it comes to involving men and boys in government policy. And please take also on the observation Laila made that it seems from the outside a bit scattered and maybe not as coordinated as we outsiders would like it to be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for asking me to tell something about the policy we are trying to develop in the Netherlands. As been mentioned before, we still have a lot of problems, of course, on gender-based violence, but also on gender transgressive violence and sexual violence in the Netherlands. Due to several incidents in the Voice of Holland about a year ago, our government decided it was really time to do something in the Netherlands. And a very important insight was that it's a really big issue in the whole country. And therefore, it's not so easy to tackle it with only policy.
For the people who don't know, sorry, I was just telling Insaf that she will be the next person to speak, but
okay.
The Voice of Holland, and the Dutch people will know, but in 1 or 2 sentences, what happened?
Excuse me, you're right. There were many incidents from victims of sexual transgressive violence. And it was made public, and it was really a big issue in the Netherlands because there were famous singers and people from the program, The Voice of Holland, who were the perpetrators of those women. So it became really big in the media. And therefore, sometimes an incident helps to get something done. And in this case, that was the case. So the government decided they had to do something, and they decided to try and make impact by appointing a government commissioner. And that government commissioner is now a year in place. We are very happy that she's here, Mariette Hamer. But the big issue...
Insaf is here from her office, and she will say something as well about it.
Okay, that's great. So it's very important that she has that role now, because the main issue that the government wants to realize is a change of culture in the Netherlands. As been said before by former speakers, is one of the big issues of gender-based violence and gender-transgressive violence. Is of course the difference in power, the power balance, the toxic masculinity, but also the gender stereotyping that is often the cause of well, behavior that you don't want to see, violence behavior or sexual violence behavior. So it's the appointment of her next to the launching of a national action program in the Netherlands that is working through several lines, which also focuses on the norms to see if we can align the norms and values in the Netherlands towards how we relate to each other as men and women, and how we can not stop stereotyping. And we try to do that in all the sectors of the Netherlands. So sports, culture, education, art, media. So it's really, really a very, very big program. I think I'm talking quite long now. I can
because I'm just
go
a little
on, but
worried because she also has
so
something to
maybe
say.
we should not say the same things. But maybe the last point about what Laila mentioned, the program we developed is a program we made by the 4 relevant ministries. So the Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of, which one do I miss? Social Affairs. Because, of course, it's always also very many incidents on the working places. So.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And I just tell you, I mean, I'm always very transparent in what we do. When the introductory conversations happened within our political group in the Senate, because your minister is from my party, from the Social Liberal Party, I asked him about what are you going to do on the Istanbul Convention and the role of men and boys. When Minister Kuipers came, who was the Minister of Health, I asked him the same question. And when Minister Weerwind came, when he was up here yesterday, I also asked him the same question. And I'm looking at my colleague Margrethe Boer, who recently was the spokesperson for Green Left in the Senate on the debate on marital captivity. And just before that, there was a small incident with Minister Kuipers, who was asked about the occurrence of femicide in the Netherlands. And he looked into the camera and said, femicide, you have to help me a little bit. I'm sure afterwards he looked it up. But I also know that Minister Weerwind came to Margrethe and he came to me and he said, we really want to learn more. And sometimes you're like, really? But then I'm like, okay, there is a willingness, there is an openness, and we should, as has been discussed by the panel, we should also be open for that dialogue. And rest assured, we will...
Maybe I can say one more thing, because I forget it, and it's really, really, really important. The program we made was made together with lots of NGOs in the Netherlands. And next to the cultural change, we really focus on the role of men as part of the solution. And also the role of bystanders, because it's already been mentioned, that's really an important role for people who see what's going to happen to interact and do something.
Such an important issue, the role of bystanders. And this is a perfect bridge to Insaf Sharif, who is working for the National Commissioner, Mariette Hamer. And I don't even know the title in English, but you will tell us.
Yeah, for sure. So Insaf Sharif, and I work for the Government Commissioner combating sexual inappropriate behavior and sexual violence. I'm here together with my colleague Marina Schouten in the back with glasses. And I'm one of the advisors focusing on the judicial system and the care system. I'm going to pick up where you left, Esther. So this government commissioner has been appointed early 2022 to bring policies further. And the government commissioner is an independent, authoritative official appointed by government in situations that demand a strong and serious response to a wicked societal problem. It's not a default government commissioner. And sexual inappropriate behavior and sexual violence is a societal wicked problem. It has been mentioned before. It's a gender problem. I'm not going to repeat that again. And my colleague Esther from the Ministry of Education mentioned earlier the launch of a national action program early on. And the government commissioner, we work closely with the ministries who contributed to this program. We endorsed the program, we advised on the program, and yeah, we also have our own activities. You should see this government commissioner as a plus on existing policies, on existing measures, on bills, etc. And we have our own activities, as I mentioned just now. We launched our first official publication December last year to raise awareness on the phenomena of sexual inappropriate behavior. Just one very crazy figure, 1 out of 2 women has experienced sexual inappropriate behavior in her life. So that's you and me, or you or me.
But we are already 100%. So.
Yeah, so we also stress the importance of confidential advisors at the workplace. It's very important that there is a safe working environment, and if something were to happen, that you can confide in someone who is competent. We also keep on doing on-site visits to organizations dealing with sexual violence and sexual inappropriate behavior, and try to disseminate the knowledge of how to combat this issue. We're working, as mentioned before, on building coalitions and finding ambassadors and influencers in all fields or all walks of life to disseminate the message that sexual violence is a societal problem, that women, that it's not acceptable, and and lastly, we are currently working now on guidelines for organizations on how to deal with reports on sexual appropriate behavior and how to protect and balance interests of all parties. So that's basically what we do as a plus on already existing policies, measures, bills, whatsoever.
And is this a unique position when you compare it to the European Union or to the Council of Europe member states?
Quite unique. We were interviewed, our government commissioner was interviewed by Bloomberg Asia about the position, so I believe it's quite unique in the world.
My dear friends from the Bureau and the Secretary General and the Equality Committee, maybe we should invite the commissioner as a follow-up to speak somewhere in the... So the invitation is upcoming. That has been arranged.
Thank you.
Before I go back to the panel and then to the Spina, there are 3 men on that side. I want to give a minute and a half each. And I will start with Bart Swiers from Emancipator, because you were already introduced by your neighbor, but I think it's really important that we know about your organization, because Jens van Tricht, the founder of Emancipator, has been working on this issue before it became very popular. So he's really a pioneer. And Yuri and Jan, I will also come to you, and then I have to close the floor. But then you know that I'll come to you as well. Bart, maybe you can say some words on the Emancipator activities and your vision on this debate.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It's difficult to add to all that's been said before, but I think what we try to do in the Netherlands, but also within the global Men Engaged network, is to really look, you mentioned the pyramid of violence, it's built on a foundation. And that foundation is the limiting beliefs we still have on what a real man should be like. And I think that's, when it comes to a culture change, is what we try to address. Like in every classroom, within youth work, within business,